Under the harsh sun of the Kenyan savanna, the air seemed to thicken, shimmering through heat waves rising from the cracked earth. The steady thud of boots on the parched ground was the only sound breaking the silence of the wilderness. Kofi stopped, his calloused and rough hands slowly lifting a rusted steel trap from the thick dust. In this wild place, silence has never been harmless. Kofi's inner voice echoed like a contemplative monologue. It is a warning, a sigh from Mother Earth before the storm. He cautiously brushed away the soil, clinging to the sharp serrated teeth, the deadly metal that had claimed the lives of so many creatures. At that moment, sunlight shone into his palm, revealing a long, stark white scar running from below the thumb to the wrist. Kofi shuddered slightly. It was not a shudder of physical pain, but because a vivid memory of a rainy day many years ago was rushing back. He looked toward the horizon, where the great rift valley met the deep blue sky. In those eyes, there was no hatred for the poachers, only a rock-solid determination, the quiet faith of a solitary guardian. Right then, the radio on his hip crackled, shattering the atmosphere. Kofi, there is movement in the core zone. A group of 3, armed. They are heading toward the rhino herd. Kofi did not hesitate for a second. He put the trap in his bag, adjusted the brim of his wide hat, and plunged into the thorny bushes. He knew this fight was not just to protect the animals, but to protect the final line of decency. Kofi entered the thorny acacia bushes with the silence of a ghost. On this step, survival is not for the loud. He did not run, but moved at a steady pace, his eyes scanning every millimeter of the ground. To a seasoned ranger like him, every broken branch, every faint footprint on the sand, or the sudden flight of a woodpecker told a story about who had just passed by. Poaching is not just a crime, Kofi thought as he squeezed through a narrow, rocky crevice. It is a betrayal of the land that fed our ancestors. He stopped, kneeling beside a crushed patch of grass that still held the faint, burnt smell of kerosene, the characteristic sin of those using modern weapons. They were very close. Solitude began to invade the space. Amidst the vast wilderness, humans become so small. Kofi understood that help was at least an hour away by helicopter, but if he stopped, the lead rhinos ahead would not have another chance to see the sun set. He tightened the strap of the rifle on his shoulder, sweat pouring down his forehead and stinging his eyes. Kofi moved deeper into the core zone, where the canopy grew denser and shadows began to dance as sunlight filtered through the leaves. He followed a small trail that animals often use to find water holes. Suddenly, instinct told him something was wrong. The silence now was too absolute. No insect sounds, no breeze. Kofi froze, hand on a gun stock, but it was too late. From the dense foliage above, a figure collapsed down. It was a perfect ambush calculated in advance. Juma, a poacher with a giant physique, had been waiting for him on a high branch. Kofi managed to pivot to avoid a direct punch, but the second man, Paka, appeared from behind. A dry thud sounded as the butt of an AK-47 slammed directly into the back of Kofi's neck. The world before his eyes spun. The yellow of the grass, the green of the leaves, and the red of the sunset blurred into a chaotic vortex. Kofi fell, his face pressed against the burning sand. He tried to get up, his trembling hands reaching forward as if to grasp a final ray of hope. But a heavy boot stepped hard on his back, plunging him into the darkness of unconsciousness. In the final moments before completely losing consciousness, the only thing Kofi felt was the saltiness of blood and the heat radiating from the ground. He had fallen into the hands of those who knew no compassion. The hunt had ended, and now, the guardian had become the trapped prey. Kofi woke up when a scoop of muddy, salty water doused his face. He coughed violently, the taste of blood in his mouth mixing with dust making his throat parched. As his vision cleared, he realized he was kneeling on the scorching savanna ground, his hands tied tightly behind his neck with rough rope. In front of him, Juma was brandishing a gun, while Paka, the one with the coldest eyes, was leisurely fiddling with the rusted steel trap he had just taken from Kofi's bag. "You've been tailing us for too long, Kofi," Paka said, his voice raspy and full of mockery. "You Rangers think you're saints, but here, only we set the rules." He held the steel trap high, the jagged teeth reflecting the afternoon sun threateningly. He did not want to kill him quickly. He wanted to use this very tool of conservation to torture and intimidate anyone who dared stand in their way. In the moment of facing death, the instinct of a son of the steppe made Kofi unusually calm. Instead of looking at the gun barrel, his eyes were instinctively drawn to a patch of tall grass about 15 meters away. Among the mottled shadows of the acacia trees, something was moving. Two golden spots, deep and majestic, were watching the scene motionlessly. It was Asani. The massive alpha lion appeared like a ghost of the wilderness. It did not roar, did not growl, just stood there in a ready-to-pounce stance. Kofi's heart pounded in his chest. He recognized this animal. He recognized the thick black mane and especially the way it slightly tilted its head when observing, a habit it had since it was a weak cub. The tension now became so suffocating that the wind whistling through the dry branches could be heard. To the poachers, the presence of the lion in the shadows seemed unnoticed because they were too excited by the power game over Kofi's body. But for a viewer, this was a shivering feeling. Would Asani appear as the final judge to end everyone? Or was he waiting for something from the kneeling man? Haka stepped forward, placing the cold gun barrel against Kofi's temple. "Say goodbye to your animals," he sneered. Kofi closed his eyes, but his mouth moved slightly. He was not begging the poachers. He was emitting a series of low sounds, a short and steady whistle like the heartbeat of the savannah. It was a secret language between him and the wild world, a signal that only souls who had once touched each other could understand. In the shadow of the bushes, Asani's ears twitched. His whiskers vibrated. He smelled the steel of the trap, the scent that had once dug deep into his flesh years ago. Hatred and memory merged in the golden eyes, turning him into a storm waiting for the day to explode. The line between life and death now was as thin as a hair under the afternoon sun. The moment Paka lightly squeezed his finger on the trigger, the world around Kofi seemed to slow down. He no longer heard the mocking laughter of the poachers, only the rapid thudding in his chest. Taking advantage of the moment Paka was absorbed in the feeling of absolute power, Kofi's bound hands worked silently. With an extraordinary calmness, his fingers searched the secret fold of his collar, where a tiny SOS signaling device was hidden. He held down the button with all his final faith. A very slight vibration responded against his skin. The GPS signal, along with precise coordinates, was launched into space, heading toward the command center. "Finished yet?" Juma snapped, gesturing toward Kofi. "Finish him off so we can go get the rhino horns." Haka sneered, raising the steel trap high, intending to perform the final cruel act. A dry clanging sound of metal colliding rang out. That very sound became the detonator for an earthquake from the wilderness. From the bushes, a roar erupted, tearing through the silent air, shaking the very ground beneath the poacher's feet. Asani was no longer an observing ghost. He lunged out like a golden arrow, cutting through the wind. But his target was not the kneeling man. The giant lion aimed straight at the one standing highest, and holding a weapon, Juma. The powerful pounce sent Juma flying, the AK-47 discharging accidentally, bullets flying wildly and plowing up the dry earth. As Asani leapt into the air, the afternoon sun shone directly on the long, rugged scar on his left leg. That scar was as clear as a testament to the past, a strange symbolic similarity to the scar on Kofi's hand. Two marks, one pain, now appearing together to execute a sentence of justice. Haka was terrified. He dropped the steel trap, hurriedly drawing the handgun hidden behind his belt to shoot Asani in the head to save his accomplice. But Kofi did not let that happen. With a superhuman effort, he used the full strength of his legs, throwing himself like a boulder to ram hard into Paka's hip. Both tumbled into the thorn bushes. The struggle took place in dust and screams. Asani's roar mixed with Paka's cursing and the Savanna wind whistling fiercely. Kofi rolled on the ground, trying to use his body as a shield, making it difficult for Paka as he tried to find a shooting angle toward the lion. He accepted the danger, accepted the thorns tearing his flesh, just to protect the being that had revealed itself for him. Under the intense afternoon sun, blood and sweat blended, creating a tragic and heroic picture of survival, where the hunter was now paying the price under the claws of nature. The sound of the Bell 206 helicopter from the distant horizon was initially just a small buzz, but very quickly it became a roaring volume, drowning out the wailing wind of the steppe. Kofi's SOS signal had guided the rapid response team to the exact coordinates in record time. Powerful beams of light from the helicopter's searchlights swept down on the scene like swords of light, blinding the remaining poacher. Paka, currently struggling with Kofi and the thorns, was completely paralyzed by the overwhelming force of the reinforcements. Special forces rappelled down lightning fast, weapons in hand locking down every escape route for the criminals. The moment the troops swarmed in, Asani froze. He released the trembling Juma, golden eyes looking toward the giant iron birds roaring in the sky. Wild instinct urged him to retreat, but he did not run immediately. He turned his head, looking directly at Kofi. By this time, Kofi had been freed from his bonds by his teammates. He stood up, breath still ragged, blood from the gash on his forehead trickling down his cheek, but his eyes were only for the Lord before him. Amidst the brilliant searchlights and swirling dust, a miraculous moment of silence appeared. Asani stood there, majestic and solemn. As he took a slow step toward the darkness of the tall grass, the helicopter light shone directly on his left leg. The rugged, old scar appeared vividly. Kofi instinctively raised his right hand, where the white scar ran from the palm to the wrist. Those two marks looked at each other in silence. A mark from human mercy, and a mark from the gratitude of a beast. Kofi sat down on the ground as the medical team approached. He refused to lie on the stretcher immediately. He picked up the rusted steel trap lying abandoned on the sand, the tool that had sparked it all. He touched the cold, serrated teeth, then looked in the direction Asani had just disappeared. He whispered softly, his voice trembling but full of happiness. "We saved each other again, old friend." The story ends as the sunset gradually fades, giving way to the starry night sky of Africa. Patrol vehicles began to escort the poachers away, returning the inherent peace to the savannah. Kofi looked into the distance, where the tall grass rustled in the night wind. He knew that out there, Asani was still walking on his territory, free and proud. Nature never forgets a favor. The final commentary echoed, gentle as a prayer. It has no ledgers to record, but it has a heart to remember. When we protect a living being, we are actually protecting the most decent part remaining in our own souls. Mercy is the most enduring bond, a thin green line that can never be broken.